American Airlines and United are two of the most popular airlines in all of the US, but which is the best and which is the worst?
For the first flight of the day, I'm going to be flying on United, and I have never flown them before, so it's going to be super interesting to see what they're actually like. But so far, when I was doing the online check-in process last night, we got off to a pretty terrible start.
After getting the check-in email, it immediately said I wasn't able to check in, but after refreshing the page, it let me go to the next step. After this, I needed to verify my documents, so I uploaded a picture of my passport, and after verifying it, it said that my passport was invalid. So naturally, I tried continuing without the passport, and I was able to make it to the next step where I was able to pick my seat, and after confirming my baggage and agreeing to having nothing dangerous, it still wouldn't let me check in.
So I have no idea why it wouldn't let me check in, why it was being difficult with my documents, so let's head inside, find a kiosk or an agent, and hopefully they can solve this problem, because I do not want to miss my flight.
Making my way into the airport, it appeared to be quite dead around the United desk, so I made my way to the check-in to see if it would finally work. After putting in my booking number, I was then prompted to scan my passport, put in where I'd be staying while in America, and agreeing to not having any dangerous items. And then finally, my boarding pass printed and I was ready to go.
Alright, so luckily we were able to get our boarding pass without having to speak to an agent, which is super good. Apparently, I just had to verify my passport documents, which wasn't really a big issue. But now that we got our boarding pass, let's head through security, check out the lounge, and then board our flight, because I am super excited to try United.
Now, after getting to security, I realized things were actually super busy, but thanks to having the right credit card, I was able to take a special line to skip everyone, and soon enough, I was through customs and entering the main terminal.
Alright, so that was one of the fastest airport security experiences I've ever had at this airport, but unfortunately, we still get searched. Literally every single time I go through security, my bags get searched, whether it's because of my camera, laptop, or I just look suspicious, I don't really know. And now that we're all through security and have some time to kill, I think we're gonna go check out a lounge and see what it's like. And then after, we'll head towards our United flight.
For today's lounge, I was checking out the Plaza Premium, which I'll be honest was kind of a letdown. Making my way inside, the lounge itself was quite small, with very limited seating and felt super claustrophobic with the tiny windows, but what really matters is the food. For breakfast, there was Vector and Fruit Loops, eggs, hash browns, sausages and beans, various types of salads, yogurt, milk, condiments, toast, bagels, tea, pops or juices, and even a full bar, so I loaded up on food, which turned out to be half decent before leaving the lounge for my flight.
Alright, so overall I'd have to give that lounge a solid 4 out of 10. The staff were super nice, but it is extremely small, there's not much seating, and on top of that, the food was pretty mediocre. And it's actually super unfortunate that things are that way, because that is the only lounge you could access in this airport, unless you're in the Air Canada lounge. And to get into that, you need a certain credit card, certain status, or be flying business class. But anyways, before we go find our gate, I thought that now would be a perfect time to tell you guys a little bit more about United, just in case you have no idea what they are.
Right off the bat, United is the third largest airline in the world in terms of revenue, the fourth in terms of passengers carried, and ranking second best in America according to the points guy. But despite this, they are still only rated a 3-star airline with tons of mixed customer reviews. On one hand, you have people complaining about a terrible experience, mind-blowingly poor customer service, and overall an underwhelming time. But on the other hand, people rave about top-tier service, being thoroughly pleased, and even calling them the best airline.
So apparently the reviews are pretty mixed. Some people really like them and other people hate them. So it is going to be super interesting to see what they're actually like. And to make sure the comparison between United and American are as close as possible, I made sure that they are almost on identical aircrafts. Even if they're a slightly different model, they're gonna be the exact same size. So that way you guys could have an actual representation as to which is actually better. But anyways, it is now 8:20 and the flight is boarding, so I think we gotta go make it to our gate, and hopefully we don't end up being late for this.
So after realizing the gate was still 7 minutes away, I picked up the pace, but unfortunately I had no idea where I was going.
Alright, I have never been to this part of the airport before, so I am kind of confused where I am right now. For some reason, it appears that the United gate that I'm at today is literally on the other side of everything, so hopefully I don't miss my flight, because it is literally already boarding.
And finally, after getting lost and making it to the other side of the airport, I made it just in time as the last group of passengers were boarding the flight.
There you go.
Next, please.
Thank you, have a good one. Alright, it is finally time for the United experience. Let's see what they're actually like. And remember, after this we're going to be flying American, so make sure you stick around for that, because it is going to be super interesting to see which one is actually better.
Morning.
Morning.
Making my way through the plane, I was able to get a pretty good idea for what the seat situation was gonna be like in a 3x3, and eventually I made it to 25A, where I'd be seated today. Right off the bat, the first thing I noticed was how the seat came with in-flight TVs, which is super rare these days, but now it was time for the comfort test. Looking at the seat, it was definitely on the thinner side, while also being a little bit stiff on the back and headrest, but it was also able to recline with a decent amount of pitch, which was nice to see.
Alright, so first impressions are actually pretty good. Getting on the plane, they handed out wet wipes, which is super cool because most airlines don't do that. And on top of that, this is only like a 2.5-hour flight, and they have in-flight entertainment, which is super rare these days. So all of that is a huge plus, but we are still on the ground and things might change during the flight. So it'll be super interesting to see how things actually are once we land.
And unfortunately, things were gonna change sooner than expected, because after checking out the large overhead bins and seeing that the legroom was definitely on the tighter side, I noticed it was 9:01 and the flight should have left by now.
Alright, so I lied about being on time because we are actually delayed because there is a sink that is overflowing. So we are now 10 minutes past the original departure time and we're still waiting on the maintenance to come and fix it. So hopefully they do that soon and I don't miss my next flight on American, because if I do end up missing that, I have no idea what I'm gonna do. And to be honest, I'm even more stressed that they're gonna potentially cancel the flight because of an overflowing sink. So hopefully they can fix it soon.
So while we waited for maintenance to come, I decided to check out the seats some more, starting with the baggage space underneath, which also came with full-size power adapters. But this is when I realized they had finally arrived. So while we wait to see if they can fix the sink or not, I think we should check out the in-flight entertainment. Right off the bat, the TV comes with a USB port for charging, 2 headphone jacks, and after getting to the home screen, it was time to explore. The first thing I was shown is their relaxation feature, which shows videos like Satisfying Colors or the New Zealand Wilderness, which is slightly strange but also kinda cool. Up next, I went into the movie tab, which was genuinely quite impressive with the amount of selection there was, and the same could be said when it comes to the TV shows as well. Another feature that was super cool was the audio tab, where you can listen to active flight communication from the pilots and also live concerts and events, which is super interesting. After that, I decided to check out the map, which was actually super responsive and one of the better airline systems I have ever seen, which really impressed me. And thankfully, as I was finishing up, maintenance had solved the issue and we had begun pushing back from the gate. For the first flight of the day, I was going to be flying 2 hours from Toronto to Chicago, and finally at 9:48 we had arrived at the runway and it was time for takeoff. Now that I was in the air, I decided to check out the seat some more because apparently there was Wi-Fi. So I started out by checking out the seat pocket, which came with a safety pamphlet and also a magazine. Inside was where I was able to find all of the different meals, snacks, and drinks available for purchase during this flight, and also how to connect to the Wi-Fi, which was actually pretty easy, but unfortunately it wasn't free. Anyways, now that we were at altitude, the in-flight service started coming around. So I pulled out my tray table, which was a solid size, and got a ginger ale for my flight today.
Alright, so now that we're a little bit over halfway through the flight, I thought I'd go ahead and share my thoughts on it so far. The seats themselves are pretty comfy, but the legroom is tight, and even the pitch on the recline doesn't go back very far. And another 2 things that I found were kind of interesting was they give out free drinks, but there's no free snacks. But besides that, there's also some pretty good things too, like the in-flight entertainment system is unreal. And on top of that, the flight staff are also super nice. But I think we have about 25 minutes left in the flight before landing, so there's a few other things that we're going to check out, and then it's time to fly American Airlines.
So now that there was only a little bit of time left in this flight, I made my way to the bathroom to check it out. Looking around, things were actually pretty good, despite being on the smaller side of things, because there was also a decent amount of headroom, and pretty much the only downside was that it could have been a little bit cleaner. But after making it back to my seat, it turns out that we had begun our descent, coming in for landing. And remember, this was only the first flight, and now we have to fly American Airlines to find out which of the two is actually better.
So overall, the first flight was pretty decent. The seating was pretty average, the staff were unreal, and the entertainment was amazing. And now that we're done on United, it is time to fly American. And the last time that I flew them, there was a ton of delays, there was blood on my seat, and it was a miserable experience. And even last night when I was doing the check-in process, there were some issues.
After getting the check-in email, I put in my last name and booking number before the entire website crashed. So after reloading and logging in, I confirmed I wasn't gonna blow up the plane, picked the only seat remaining by the window, and then I was all checked in and ready to go.
So overall, the check-in experience was slightly better than United, but it still wasn't amazing. And now it's time to head into the terminal to grab our boarding pass, potentially check out the lounge, and then it's time to fly American. Let's see how they compare to United.
Making my way inside, the American Airlines desks were surprisingly dead, and since I was traveling light, I decided to use the kiosk. After putting in my booking number, agreeing again to not blowing up the plane, I was then given the offer to skip my flight for cash. So I randomly hit 450 bucks to see what would happen before grabbing my boarding pass.
All right, so I was able to get my boarding pass, and luckily I have a window seat. But during that process, they gave me a prompt to potentially switch my flight to a later one in exchange for $450. So I said yes, and maybe it's gonna happen, maybe it won't. And normally I wouldn't agree to do something like that, but I don't have another flight scheduled for today until tomorrow, so I have a bunch of free time, so why not? So let's head through security, try and find a lounge, and we'll see if we get booted to another flight or not. This is gonna be super interesting.
And thankfully, since I was TSA pre-checked, I was able to make it through security and into the terminal in record speed.
All right, so luckily I got TSA pre-checked, which means security went by super quick and there were no issues. Almost every time I fly in the States, I don't get double inspected, but in Canada I do. So thankfully this time we get to add a point to the tally of not being pat down and searched. But anyways, in the Chicago airport, there are apparently a few lounges, but the ones that I have access to are in a completely separate terminal. But since we have 2.5 hours before my flight, I think it's worth trying to go find them, so we're gonna do that real quick. And hopefully things go smooth.
So after finding the sign for the bus, I made my way through the airport, but when I got to the desk, I ran into a slight issue.
All right, so apparently to board the bus, you need a valid passport and boarding pass, but my boarding pass says this terminal, so I don't know if they're gonna actually let me get on the bus to the other terminal. I'm sure it'll be okay, but there's a pretty high chance that I'm gonna be stuck here and have to go get food somewhere else. Hi there. So my boarding pass is technically for this terminal, but can I head over there for a lounge then head back, or is that not allowed?
No, if you want to go to a lounge, you have to take the train.
The train? Okay, thank you. Well, that's kind of stupid. So basically the only way that I'm able to check out the lounge is if I leave security again, take the train to the other terminal, then take the bus back here. So we're not gonna do that because it seems to be quite excessive. But if I'm being honest, it's kind of ridiculous that Chicago's airport doesn't just let you freely transfer between terminals. But I mean, I guess it is what it is.
So instead, I headed to Manchu Walk for some food, and overall it was pretty solid.
All right, so now that I've actually had some time to get some food in me, I have about 40 minutes until my flight, so I thought I'd take this time to tell you guys a little bit more about American, just in case you have no idea what they are and you have never flown them before.
Right off the bat, American is the second largest airline in the world, rated 4th in the US according to the Points Guy, but unfortunately they're considered to be the most unreliable airline in the country, being fined for lengthy delays, and somehow they're still 3 stars with tons of mixed reviews. On one hand, you have people complaining about staff and terrible experiences despite being a loyal customer, but on the other, people rave about good flights and how American is the only airline they'd fly.
So overall, the reviews are super mixed. There's some that are good, there's some that are bad. And in my personal opinion, they used to be way better a few years ago because 3 weeks when I flew them last, my Wi-Fi wasn't working, the in-flight entertainment didn't work on the plane, and there was also blood on the seat, which is pretty concerning. And funny enough, I still don't know if I'm actually gonna be on this plane or not, or they're gonna give me the $450 voucher and put me on a later flight. So I think we should head to the gate and figure that out because it is pretty important.
And as I was making my way there, I noticed the plane I was going to be boarding in just a bit, if they don't put me onto another one.
Excuse me. When I was doing the check-in, it said like for people willing to like skip flights. When do I know?
I can tell you right now, we won't need it.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, so it looks like we're actually gonna be on this flight. So it's time to board and see what American Airlines is actually like. Hello.
Thank you.
Thank you. Time to see how American compares to United. Hi there.
Making my way through the plane, it turns out this was the exact same model as the United flight from earlier, with a similar seating layout in a 3x3, and this time I was also in seat 25A. Right off the bat, the first thing that I noticed was that on this flight, there was no in-flight entertainment with the TV, unlike our flight from earlier, and instead it was simply a device holder. But how about the seat? Doing the comfort test, this seat definitely had more padding than the one on United, and I'd have to say, it felt much comfier, but when it comes to the legroom, they were almost identical, and even reclining the seat felt extremely similar. Now making my way underneath, the similarities continued with lots of storage for bags and full-size power adapters, which was nice to see.
All right, so some initial impressions is the seat is pretty comfy, and another thing that I noticed is the legroom is pretty comparable. And even though the seats seem comfy at first, we won't actually know until the end of the flight, so that is going to be the real test.
Looking around the seats some more, I realized it was actually super dirty, with stains or messes pretty much everywhere I looked. But a plus side was that there is a second USB port for for charging. The device holder could pretty much hold anything. There was tons of space in the overhead bins, and the reading lamp and air conditioning was working. But then I got some horrible news.
Alright, so we just got told that the flight had been delayed an hour because there's a latch under the plane that they need to fix. They wouldn't even give us an exact time of how long we're exactly delayed for, but it said 2 p.m. So far, both United and American are great for the delays. I love flying.
And to be honest, this was extremely frustrating considering the United flight from earlier was also delayed. But after an hour of Subway Surfer at 2:17, we finally pushed back from the gate to begin taxiing. For the second flight of the day, I'm going to be flying 2 hours from Chicago to Boston, and soon after getting to the runway, it was time for takeoff. Now that we had reached cruising altitude, I think it's time to check out the seats some more. Up first, I checked out the empty seat pocket, which was a decent size, before checking out the safety pamphlet, which was also quite standard, and also the one for in-flight entertainment and information. To access this, first I needed to connect to the Wi-Fi, then scan the QR code before being brought to the in-flight website. Here you can choose to go online for 1 hour, which would cost you $15, or the entire flight at $19, which is quite frankly ridiculous. Up next, I decided to check out the entertainment, which to be fair was pretty decent, having quite a selection for both movies and TV shows, but overall it was nothing compared to United and the quality of their entertainment system. But anyways, soon enough the in-flight service began, so I pulled out the tray table, which appeared to be slightly bigger than the one on United, before getting some biscuits and a glass of water.
Alright, at this point we're about halfway through the flight, so I thought that now would be a great time to share my thoughts. Right off the bat, it is super funny because everywhere that United is really good, American is bad, but everywhere that American's really good, United's bad. For example, when it comes to the in-flight entertainment, United had the screen, it was awesome, but on American we have the mobile devices and it just really isn't as good. And on the flip side, when it comes to the seats, United seats were definitely not as good, but American seats are actually pretty decent and comfy. And even if we want to give another example, on United when they did drinks, they didn't give out snacks, but on American you get drinks and snacks. So overall it's going to be super hard to make a decision as to which airline is actually better, especially considering that both of them ended up being delayed. And I think we have about an hour left in this flight, so make sure you guys stick around to the end of this video to find out which of these two airlines is actually better.
Now that I was done eating, I decided to check out the bathroom, which was pretty comparable in size, and I'd have to say, this one was definitely messier. But anyways, since this was such a short flight, after making it back to my seat, it turns out we had begun our descent into Boston, and soon enough we were coming in for landing. So now the big question remains, is United or American the better airline? Well, considering both suffer from delays, the best comparison would be the staff, seats, and entertainment, and in this experience, I'd have to give United the edge. But anyways, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to watch this one next, where I flew America's best and worst airline.